Storytime about how my boyfriend cheated on me with his best friend's sister. So a little background information, I was 15 and in 9th grade, and we're gonna call my boyfriend Alex. Alex and I had been together for 6 months, and at the beginning of our relationship, his best friend, who we're gonna call Caleb, him and I literally despised each other. But Alex would always want all three of us to hang out, so we decided that we had to get along. So we decided to keep it civil only when we were with Alex. Well, fast forward, all of a sudden, Caleb's grown-ass sister starts hanging out with Caleb and Alex 24/7. And it was weird because she was like a senior hanging out with a freshman. But I didn't think anything of it at first. Well, then out of nowhere, while I was at school, like a week later, Alex says that him and I need to have a talk. So we start walking away from Caleb, and as we're walking away, Caleb looks at me and gives me like this good luck look. Then he told me that he wanted us to take a break. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with his best friend's sister. So like I said, he tells me that we need to talk, and then he goes, I think we should take a break. Like, what do you mean, take a break? Well, funny thing, throughout this whole break, he was still being touchy with me, still acting like we were in a whole-ass relationship. And the whole time, I was acting like I was fine, so that way I didn't want him to feel bad for me and felt like he had to get back together with me. And he was acting like nothing happened. Like I said, it was getting to the point where all my friends had started asking if him and I were back together. And I had to be like, no, we're not back together yet. Well, then Friday rolls around, aka 2 weeks later, and he tells me that he misses me. Shocker. So then he said he wanted to get back together. I said yes, obviously, because I still really liked him and I was a dumbass not to see the red flags. Well, now that it was second time around of us being together, I started to notice the first flags that I didn't notice in the beginning of our relationship. Like the one time he went to the mall with his friends and he gave these girls his Snapchat. He wasn't going to tell me about it, but then his friends told me, like for part 3. Part 3 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with his best friend's sister. So like I said, I started noticing red flags. Well, when I had confronted him about the Snapchat thing, he told me that he felt bad if he didn't give it to them because he didn't want to be mean. Another red flag is that he would never, ever, 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 ever let me touch his phone. Like if he even saw my eyes look at his phone for 0.2 seconds, he would grab it real quick. Anyways, back to him getting with Caleb's sister. When we had got back together after our break, this one girl came up to me and she was like, hey, I have to tell you something. I didn't think it was going to be anything about my relationship with Alex, but here we go. She goes, he broke up with you to hook up with some other girl. So obviously I'm fuming. I go up to him and I'm like, did you break up with me to go and hook up with another girl? He goes, that's in the past. Why are you mad about it? Like we were broken up. Clearly he thought it was okay just to break up whenever you want to go do shit with someone else. Apparently she said that they could do stuff if we broke up, but I ended up finding out that she does this to all of her little brother's friends.
Storytime about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimer is not my storytime, it's sending me on Instagram. I'm 24 years old and my boyfriend is 21. According to him, he has never been with any girl who's had cellulite before, or even an ounce of body fat. Yes, I know what you're thinking, he's a total asshole, which in that sense, he is. But the rest of the time, he's completely fine and actually sweet. We met last year at a friend's party. At the party, I instantly fell in love with him. I thought he was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. And it was reciprocated. I saw him from across the room and he made eye contact. A few minutes later, he walked over to me and just struck up a conversation. I know that people present themselves the way they want to be seen, especially when they're trying to impress someone they're attracted to. He started telling me about how he's studying to be a doctor, how he volunteers at animal shelters, and that every single weekend he also volunteers at the soup kitchen. Everything he said was absolutely perfect. By the end of the night, he had asked me out on a date and I said yes. I did explain to him that I didn't want anything serious and he said that was totally fine. I was trying to focus on my studies, so having a boyfriend was not in my plans. But after we went on 7 dates, he asked me to be his girlfriend. He wouldn't take no for an answer. After about a month, I finally said yes. Mind you, at this point, he hadn't seen me naked, not even in a bathing suit. The very night that I said yes to being his girlfriend, he asked me to come over to his place. He made a whole gourmet dinner, even bought super expensive wine. So we ended up doing it for the first time that night. The next morning when I woke up, the first thing he said to me was, do you ever exercise? I was shocked. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimers are not my story time, I sent me on Instagram. That's when he said point blank, super serious, do you ever exercise? I just stared at him. I had literally just woken up in his bed after the first time we ever did it. Then I thought he must be joking. So I started to laugh a little, and then he says, no, seriously, do you ever exercise? I said, sometimes. Then he told me, you should really try to work out at least 5 times a week. I went home and finally texted him saying that I wasn't comfortable with the way he spoke to me. That's when he said that what he said to me was completely normal, and that I shouldn't be offended. This was all in text, by the way. That's when he sends me another text message saying, you know, you wouldn't have as much cellulite as you do if you didn't eat so much fast food. And if you exercise 5 times a week like I told you. I didn't reply to him for the rest of the day. Later that day, he shows up to my apartment apartment and says, you know, I should feel comfortable enough to tell you what I think about you. He somehow ended up making me feel bad and I ended up apologizing. Obviously, after that, I became really self-conscious about my cellulite and my entire body. So anytime we were together, I would always stay under the covers. By the way, my boyfriend doesn't have a great body. He's super soft and pudgy. Last week, he told me that he had abs though. Part 3 is a story time about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, instead I'm on Instagram. One day, he pulls up his shirt and says, look, I have abs. Which, no, he doesn't. He's super soft and has a thick layer of fat on it. I smirked and he said, what? And I said, you don't have abs. Then he says, yes, I do. I'm in better shape than you. By the way, he said this in front of his friends, so I was super embarrassed and stayed quiet the entire day. He finally went to drop me off and I was so happy to be home. But he decided to come upstairs with me. Got straight into my PJs. And when I came out of my bedroom, he says, wow, your cellulite's getting worse by the day. That's when I finally broke. I turned around and started yelling at him. I told him he had no right to talk about my body the way that he did, and that all he does is objectify me. He started laughing and said, wow, those are big words. And that when we met, he thought that I was in better shape. But my clothes obviously tricked him. I'm 5'4" and I weigh 130 pounds. I am by no means fat, but the way that he was bullying me was making me think that I was. That's when I told him that he was the fat one, and that he had a big huge beer belly. I also told him that his face was super round, but that didn't bother me. Oh yeah, and that his hairy back was gross. Then he said, wow, I can't believe you're attacking my physical appearance. Then he stormed out of my apartment, and as soon as he left, I felt happy. We haven't spoken in 4 days. I'm afraid that if he asks me to get back with him, I will. But I should just break up with him, right? What should I do?
Story time about how I found out that my mom was sleeping with my history teacher to get me better grades. So it was my junior year of high school, and everybody knows that your junior year is the most important year of high school. If you didn't, well, now you know. My brother was in his senior year of high school, and when he was a junior, he had the same teacher, so he knew how hard the class was. So he would stay up with me every night helping me to pass my history class. Well, the one day I'm at school and I'm taking a test, and I literally did not know anything on the test. And I studied the night before for literally 4 hours straight. So I decided to copy off the girl next to me. Well, a few days later, we get our test back, and I'm looking at mine, and I got a 97%. And then I look over to the girl next to me, she got a 33%. And then I started going through the tests, and none of the essay questions looked like my handwriting, but I didn't say anything because I wanted that A. Well, the one night, I'm sitting down with my family having dinner, and I told them that I copied off the girl next to me, and how I got a 97% and she got a 33%, and my brother flips out like for part 2. Part 2 of my mom sleeping with my history teacher to get me better grades. So like I said, I told my parents that I got a 97, she got a 33. And I was telling them how the handwriting didn't even look like mine and everything. And then my brother starts flipping out. In front of my dad, too. He goes, Mom, are you fucking serious? You couldn't let her try and do this on her own? And I was super confused. Like, I thought that maybe he was talking about my mom paid off the teacher. But then he said, yeah, Dad, if you didn't know, Mom's been fucking our history teacher to get us better grades. And then he goes, Mom, you're such a fucking whore. And my mom's sitting there not even fazed. She just took a drink of her wine and said, get the fuck upstairs now. Before my brother leaves the table, he goes, maybe you can fuck Dad's boss too. Maybe he'll get a raise. And then I realized what was happening. And it's around 6:30 p.m. So after that, a lot of stuff happened. My dad obviously wanted to get a divorce at that point. So my dad took my brother and I to our grandparents. And we stayed with them for like 2 weeks. But then everybody at school found out. And we got made fun of a lot. And then after that, we moved schools.
Story time about how I've never farted in front of my boyfriend and can't even poop if he's in my house, which led me to pooping in my car by mistake. Disclaimer is not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for 3 months. We are so in love, and we met through a dating app. He even moved into my apartment. I know some might say it's quick, but it's just meant to be. We are so in love. We get along super well. We're so attracted to each other. Our sexy time is like amazing, like the best I have ever had. And I was the one that asked him to move in with me, and he said yes right away. I actually thought he was going to say no, but he was so down for it that I was so happy. Before he moved in, he actually would come over to my house all the time, and he started farting in front of me. It was cute, funny, whatever. But I can't bring myself to doing it in front of him. I can't even poo when he's in my apartment, much less could I poo when I was at his. So I found myself having to hold it in all day long. Anytime we would go to a restaurant, I would try to go, but sometimes I just couldn't go because I knew that he was there. It's all become very complicated. Now that he moved into my place, we love watching movies. So we were sitting on the couch watching a movie, and suddenly I felt the urge to go to the bathroom. There was no way I was going to go poop while he was there. Out of nowhere, I jump up and tell him that I have to go out. I get in my car, part 2 is up. Story time about how I can't fart in front of my boyfriend or even poop when he's in the same place as me, which caused me to poo in my car by mistake. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. Out of nowhere, I jump off the couch and tell him I have to go to the supermarket. He offers to go for me and I said no, but in hindsight, I should have said yeah, sure, you go, so that I could stay alone in the apartment by myself and go poo. I grab my keys and jump in the car, and then suddenly, I start pooping. I couldn't control myself. I couldn't believe it was happening right then and there. I stopped the car and pulled over and just pooped in my car. Luckily, I was wearing baggy pants, so you couldn't really notice it. Suddenly, I remembered I had an extra change of clothes in my car. I looked behind me and there it was, a pair of jeans. I take off my sweatpants and try to wipe myself as best as I could. And I actually went to a CVS, went into the bathroom, cleaned myself. I even bought baby wipes. Oh my god. I changed into the jeans and I got back in the car and went home. When I get home, my boyfriend says, "Did you just change?" Then I told him I ripped my pants somehow in the grocery store. And then he said, "You didn't bring anything back from the grocery store." And I didn't know what to say. Part 3 is up. Time about how I can't fart in front of my boyfriend and this caused me to poop in my car by mistake. Disclaimers are not my story time. I was on my Instagram. I told him that I had ripped my pants, so I changed into other pants. And then he asked, "But you didn't bring anything back from the supermarket." And I said, "Oh yeah, you're right." Then I told him that I went to CVS instead because I needed baby wipes, which I actually did buy them, so I showed them to him. But let's remember I had just pooped on myself, so I really wanted to take a shower. So I tell him, "Hey babe, I'm actually gonna take a shower because I just got my period." Then he says, "But you just had your period last week." I just kept digging a bigger and bigger grave. Then he sits me down and says, "What's going on?" I just couldn't lie anymore. And I told him the truth, that I had pooped in the car because I didn't want to poop in the apartment because he was there. That's when he started laughing maniacally and told me that I was being so stupid. To this day, I still can't fart in front of my boyfriend. And I still can't go to the bathroom. I'm not sure how to fix this or how to even go about actually doing it for the first time. So maybe you guys have some ideas. Also, never going back to that CVS because I'm pretty sure I didn't put the pants in the trash and they were just lying on the floor and they saw me go in. What should I do?
Story time about how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So just some background information. My husband and I got engaged 2 years ago. And this whole situation happened a month after we got married. So fast forward, it's a Sunday morning. Well, usually every week on Sunday, I clean the whole house. So I woke up, went into the bathroom to take my ring off, and I could not get it off. Mind you, I had gained a little bit of weight since my husband and I got engaged. Anyways, I tried butter, I tried soap, I tried everything, even oil. So after trying to get it off for an hour straight, my finger was 3 times bigger than it usually is. So at this point, I'm really scared that I'm going to have to get it cut off. Because 1, I didn't want to ruin it, and 2, it was really expensive. So I call my husband and he's like, "Oh, call your dad. Firefighters always know what to do." So I called my dad and thank God he lived 5 minutes away because he drove over really quickly. Like for part 2. Part 2 of how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So like I said, my dad lived 5 minutes away, so he just rushed over to my house. And we tried a few more things to get it off. We tried Windex, we tried the dental floss, none of it was working. So my dad told me that we were going to have to cut it off with pliers. So he comes over with the pliers, cuts the ring off. Well, a few days later, I had taken it to the same place that we got it to get the band fixed. Or replaced. While I was there, I decided to get it appraised, just for insurance reasons. So a few days later, I go and pick up my ring, and when I get home, I look at the appraisal. It was not the same one that I had picked out in the store. It looked exactly like it, but there was like a $20,000 price difference. So right now, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm not mad about the money part. I'm more mad that my husband lied to me. I was more upset about the fact that he had lied to me. So I had made dinner reservations for the next night, so that way I could hopefully bring up the conversation about it, like for part 3.
My boyfriend confessed to me that he's attracted to my best friend. Should I leave him? Disclaimers not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I know you guys are gonna all say yes immediately, but hear me out. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 6 months. My best friend and I actually met him at a bar. That night, I never expected that he would ever come after me. I consider my best friend the prettier of the two of us, so I'm used to her getting hit on instead of me. But that night, my boyfriend came to me. He talked to me pretty much the entire night, and my best friend told me to go for it. So I did. He and I spent the night together, and after that, we were inseparable. To the point where he wanted me to move in with him after 2 months. My parents thought I was absolutely crazy and they didn't want me to move in with him, but I did anyway. I come from a Latino family, so this was absolutely reprehensible. I went against my family's wishes and they actually stopped speaking to me for a little bit, but luckily I got them back. My boyfriend during that time gave me all his support. He told me that my family would come around eventually and that they would see that we were in love. So living together was a logical next step. After 3 months of living together, I knew that I wanted to marry him, and he would talk about marriage all the time. He asked me what kind of ring I would want and what I would want for the proposal. We even started talking about our honeymoon. I was also starting to get in the best shape of my life. I was looking super snatched. My boyfriend told me that he loved the way that I look, but that he didn't want me to get skinny. Again, I just felt like he was supporting me and loving me. Around this time, my best friend started dating somebody. After a few weeks, they got really serious about the relationship. And of course, we went on double dates. After the 3rd double date, I noticed that my boyfriend was getting a little annoyed. I got the feeling he was jealous of my best friend's boyfriend. Follow for part 2. Boyfriend confessed to me that he's attracted to my best friend. Should I leave him? Disclaimer, not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I asked him if he was jealous of my best friend's boyfriend, and that's when he said no. But every time we would go on double dates, he would get in such a bad mood. 3 weeks ago, my best friend told me that she was moving in with her boyfriend. And when I told my boyfriend that they were moving in, his face almost went green. I asked him what was wrong, and he said nothing. After that, he went into the bathroom and didn't come out for 40 minutes. Again, I asked him if he was okay, and he said yeah. And I sat him down and asked him to be honest with me. That's when he said, I'm attracted to your best friend. Instantly started to cry because I had already been suspecting it. He explained to me that he didn't have any feelings for her until she got a boyfriend, and that he felt that he had some sort of ownership over her. Before my best friend got a boyfriend, the three of us would hang out a lot, and not once then did I ever get a feeling that he was attracted to her. He told me that he would never act on his feelings, but he didn't want to go on any more double dates. I asked him if he wanted to be with her instead of me, and he said absolutely not. He said that I was the love of his life, and that attraction only meant attraction, that he didn't have feelings for her. A few days later, he took me to the most expensive restaurant in our city and asked me to marry him, but I didn't know what to say. I can't stop thinking that he's attracted to my best friend. Part 3 is up. Boyfriend confessed to me that he's attracted to my best friend. What should I do? Disclaimer, is not my story time. Sending me on Instagram. After he proposed, I told him I didn't know what to say. He told me to think it over. I finally decided to tell my best friend what my boyfriend had told me, that he had confessed that he was attracted to her. First, she laughed. I told her no, I'm serious. He confessed that he's attracted to you. That's when she told me I needed to break up with him. That's when I told her that he had also proposed, and she said, well, then you really need to break up with him now. That's when she told me that she didn't want me to resent her, and that it was completely out of her control. And I didn't. I promised her that I would never resent her for my boyfriend being attracted to her. It's not like she ever did anything on purpose to make him feel attracted. She also told me that marrying him right now would be rushing into it, and she's kind of right. We've only really known each other for 6 months. Then she told me that she's never gotten the feeling that he's attracted to her. She's never caught him looking at her or anything like that. So now her theory is that he's looking for an easy way out, and that he probably wants me to break up with him. But my boyfriend is still sweet and super affectionate. He's constantly showering me with love. My best friend thinks that if I stay with him, our relationship will suffer. I've known my best friend longer. What should I do?
Story time about how my best friend and I were dating the same guy. So a little background information, I was 15 and it was my freshman year of high school, and I had been dating this guy for 3 months who we're gonna call Jacob. He was a part of the popular group and was known for cheating on all his past girlfriends. But why would I see that as a red flag? Because I'm fucking dumb. Anyways, of course he was cheating on me too, and people would tell me that. First I wanted to leave him, but the problem was he came from a super rich family and he was really cute. So in reality, I really only wanted to stay with him so that way he would keep spoiling me with expensive gifts. He would literally buy me anything and everything I wanted. So my best friend, who we can call Taylor, she came over for a sleepover. The whole night we talked about Jacob cheating on me, and she asked me why I had not broken up with him yet. So I told her why I wouldn't leave, and then she hyped me up. She was like, period sis, do what you gotta do. Well, then I came up with this super good plan for my best friend and I both to get gifts from him and use him. So then I came out and I said, you should be his side chick. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend and I were dating the same guy. So like I said before, he was cheating on me 24/7, but he was spending money on me 24/7. That's the reason why I wouldn't leave him. So then I told my best friend that she should be his side chick, so that way we could both use him for his money. So Taylor started flirting with him to try and make him want her too. And I may have given it a little push by giving her his Snapchat, so she tried to slide in his DMs and then also tried texting him on Snapchat. At first, his cheating ass did not want to do anything with her. And I was like, the one time. Anyways, he was like, I'm with your best friend right now. I don't think we should do this. But of course, like all boys who cheat, he ended up meeting up with her. And they started sneaking around. Meanwhile, I knew all the tea. Taylor was telling me everything. Taylor started getting things from him 24/7, and he looked so stupid. Well, then we decided to fuck with him one more time. Like for part 3. Story time about how my best friend and I were dating the same guy at the same time. So like I said, she was sneaking around with him. Meanwhile, she was telling me everything. He was buying her gifts, he was buying me gifts, so everything was perfect. But we had one little trick left up our sleeves. We decided that we would both make a wish list and put everything that we wanted on there. And at the end of the month, we would have a sleepover, bring everything that we got. Well, on the night of the sleepover, we brought everything, and let me tell you, this filled up my king-size bed. There was stuff all on the floor. So what did I do? I took a video of it, and I uploaded it to Instagram, tagging him and his friends, and wrote a long-ass caption, basically saying, if you cross me, this is what will happen. You'll get played. He was so embarrassed, his friends and everyone at school basically laughed at his dumb ass. Well, he ended up telling his mommy about it, and they came and talked to my parents, and they pretty much just told them to get the fuck over it, like your son did what he did willingly. She didn't do anything wrong. She meaning me. My dad was kind of mad at me, but my mom was super impressed about it, and we laugh about it all the time.
Storytime about how my fiance is refusing to help me plan our wedding. Should I leave him? Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's me on Instagram. I'm so sad about the palette. My fiance and I met a few years ago through friends. When we first met each other, I had a really bad first impression of him. First off, he was completely up himself. All he did was talk about himself and never once asked me questions. We were surrounded by other people, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt when he asked me out. I said yes, but our first date was kind of the same. He only really talked about himself, his career, the things he likes to do, his favorite foods, his family, his dog. I eventually just started volunteering information because he wouldn't really ask me. After our date, I didn't speak to him for a full 2 weeks. I was really turned off by his attitude, but then he messaged me saying that he was really nervous and that he realizes that he probably could have been a little more talkative. I said, yeah, you could have been. I told him how I really felt and he did apologize and he asked me out to dinner again. This time I invited him to my apartment and he made us a full 4-course meal. By the way, he's a chef. Obviously, that night, I completely fell in love with him. He made all of my favorite foods, but the gourmet version. A few months later, we became boyfriend and girlfriend. There were still a few things that I didn't like about him, though. Like, he never really had anything to talk about other than himself. Exactly a year after we met, he decided to propose, and I said yes. But when I asked him to do things for the wedding, he says no. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my fiance is refusing to help me plan our wedding. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's me on Instagram. To be honest, when he asked me to marry him, I was totally blindsided. Honestly felt like our relationship was starting to get stale. So when he asked me to marry him, I was like, for real? He told me that I was the first person who ever made him feel important. And looking back, I realized that it's because he only talked about himself and I really let him talk about only himself. Anyway, I immediately said yes out of the excitement, but when I called my mom to tell her, I was actually crying, which is like, okay, maybe I shouldn't marry him then. A few weeks into our engagement, we hadn't talked about planning at all. So I decided to ask him, like, what do you want the wedding to be like? That's when he told me that he didn't really care, but that he would just give me money for it. I mean, on one hand, that makes me really happy because I don't want my parents to have to pay for the wedding, and he has a lot of money. But on the other hand, I want him to be involved, especially for the food because he's a chef. I decided to hire a wedding planner because my job is extremely busy. I work in marketing. I asked him to go to a few meetings with me. He said no. When I finally found the perfect wedding planner, I asked my fiance if we could go have lunch with him, and he said no. This is when I blew up in his face. I asked him why he wasn't participating at all. That's when he told me that he was too busy at the restaurant, that he didn't have time to do anything with the wedding. I was like, okay, fine. When it came time to choosing the caterers, I demanded that he go with me. He told me that he would try to get off work, but he never did. Every time I tried to schedule it, he would say that he was busy with work. That's when I told him that his restaurant, which is super fancy, should just cater the whole wedding. And he said no. He told me they were way too busy and ready to get a Michelin star, so there was absolutely no way they could cater his wedding. That's when he said, you can handle it, I trust you. I went home and cried the entire night. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my fiance refuses to help me plan our wedding. Disclaimer, not my story time, it's me on Instagram. After I got home and cried, he came home and asked me what was wrong. That's when I told him that he didn't seem excited about the wedding, and that leaving all the planning to me made me feel like I was his employee, as if I had nothing better to do, which I do have my career just like he has his. Not to mention the fact that me picking everything I want for our wedding makes it feel like it's my wedding and not ours. He told me that I was overreacting. He also said that he was excited for the wedding, but that he was too tired and too busy to even think about it. That's when I told him that I was really busy and I was really tired too. And he begrudgingly told me that he would carve out some time this week so that we could speak to some of the caterers. I told the wedding planner and he started setting up some meetings. But of course, my fiance canceled on the first 2. He did show up to the 3rd one, but all he did was criticize the food. Then we went cake tasting. I expected this to be fun. When my friends have had cake tastings for their wedding, they always have so much fun. As soon as we showed up to the cake shop, he asked me, where did you find this? That's when I told him that our planner had found it. He said it looked like a supermarket bakery. That's when I told him that I don't mind supermarket bakeries and that it was probably just as good as a French bakery. He laughed and said, wow, you're funny, babe. We tasted the cakes and he actually liked them. Thank God. But then he requested to go to more cake tastings. We ended up going to 5 other places. This was already too much for me. I got a new account at work and I'm still trying to lose weight for the wedding. So him making me run around trying to taste cake is like the straw that broke the camel's back. After 2 weeks, we finally decided on a cake flavor. Most people must have fun planning their weddings, right? But I just feel like I'm drowning. I have to make all the important decisions on my own. I decided to involve my mom and sister and they've helped me so much. Of course, the wedding planner is helping me too, but ultimately the decisions have to be made by me. He hasn't made any effort to help me with anything else. I kind of want to break up with him, but I feel like this isn't a big enough reason to break up with him. What should I do?
Story time about how my best friend got my house raided. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 11th grade, and we're gonna call my best friend Jenna. Jenna and I have been on and off friends since elementary school. Now, the reason why we were on and off friends was because Jenna was the type of person who ended up in drama all the time. And coincidentally, anytime that I would stop being her friend, I would be in no drama. Now, there have been multiple times where I've tried to break off our friendship for good, but Jenna, of course, was the type of girl who would threaten to unalive herself whenever things didn't go her way. And I low-key have a savior complex. Also, I literally lived right across the street from her. So it was very hard to cut this friendship off. Well, anyways, fast forward, so her and I are friends, which also wasn't good because she was a very bad influence on me. For example, I didn't have a driver's license, but I had a car. So of course I would go pick her up and her and I would fuck shit up together, aka do bad things. Well, the one night I let her drive and she ended up going to my ex-boyfriend's house, like for part 2 about how my best friend got my house raided. So like I said, no license, but I had a car and I let her drive that night. And she went to my ex-boyfriend's house. Now, her and him used to be close whenever him and I were dating. And I didn't think anything of it until she called him and she kept telling him to come outside of his house so we could fight him. And I'm telling her to stop, but she just keeps laughing the whole time and she always does shit like this. And I was tired of being pulled into shit like this because then I got named the psycho stalker girl. So then I find out that after she went home that night, she texted my ex with this whole elaborate story about how I was the one who made her drive to his house and say all that shit. So fast forward, her and I got into it at school because I told a counselor that she was threatening to unalive herself because I was really worried for her. But then she starts posting stuff about my mental health on social media, saying things like, oh, she has zebra stripe arms. And I fought her after that. Because the only reason why I told our counselor is because I gave a shit about her mental health, like for part 3. Part 3 about how my best friend got my house raided. So like I said, she posted stuff online about my mental health, and then her and I, we ended up fighting at school, and her mom decided to press charges. But then I ended up showing the cops everything that she had said to me online and all the bullying that she was doing, and how she would literally blackmail me into being friends with her. And this made Jenna and Jenna's mom super unhappy, so they ended up filing a false report about me to the police, saying that I have illegal stuff in my house, and I do this, and I do that, and I plan on unaliving my mom. Like, what the fuck? So in the middle of the night, my whole family and I are woken up by this loud banging on our front door. So my mom, hurry up, go open the door, and they're saying that they have a warrant, and come to find out, the only thing that they could find were a bunch of empty vapes, which my mom was not happy about. And yeah, my mom and I's relationship is super rocky sometimes, but I would never try to unalive her.